Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Value of Everything. So, this morning I have been a little bit undecided on what episode I'll be doing. Was in a bit of an economic frenzy last night with all the happenings in China, and I just sort of I'm noticing that I seem to be getting good responses from either economics or something highly emotional. So if I talk about how to fight evil or the meaning of life, I seem to get a certain kind of reaction. And then if I talk about economics, I seem to be quite popular on YouTube. So fairly interesting. There's sort of like a little balance there. Maybe it's one swing of the pendulum to the other. But I'm just going to be some man who talks about emotional economics from now on, because that seems to be where my popular area seems to be. But this is actually outside of that genre of topics. I'm gonna go and have a little monologue about Hollywood running out of ideas. Now, I think I've mentioned this a few times before, but when you go down to the movies, there's a lot of stuff down there which you've seen before. There's remakes of remakes. There's new Star Wars which are coming out. There's new Ghostbusters which are going to be coming out. There's endless remakes of remakes, which is a little bit non-creative, and I mean, I guess you can evolve a plot line and you can evolve a story a bit more, but how about coming up with a brand new idea? And there's a certain way of thinking of how this is happening, but it's a little bit annoying, but let me just do a little explanation. So, if I am a big movie mogul investor, so like a producer type man, and somebody comes up to me with a plot or a movie script, I'm going to try and see how much I can turn that into a giant revenue profit making movie. Now, the problem if somebody comes up to me, like a James Cameron, like a very young James Cameron, and he says, right, I've got a really good idea where these creatures come back from the future, and they destroy the planet, and there's an overthrow, and there's a fight, and all of a sudden the planet blows up, but then we move to another planet somewhere else, and we survive there, but then the problem haunts us still, and I don't know, whatever the plot is. But it just sounds like the person is just telling you about how much money he's going to spend. They're going to spend this much on this. I'm going to record the movie at night, so it's going to cost even more. It's going to be bum 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 bum, and the producer just goes, "Well, I think we've got a few of those movies out already. I think we can avoid that one, and yeah, we'll give that one a miss. Maybe you can find another movie studio that can take on this idea." And that's the end of that, really, of that idea, and scatters any of those ideas. Now, not to say that movies have become a lot cheaper over time, where you would have to like do these massive battle scenes with actual people. You can use CGI to recreate people, like say in Lord of the Rings. You can do planets exploding, all of those kind of stuff, and it's as realistic as it's going to be, if not too real. So it's amazing in that sense. Not to say though that CGI does cost a fair bit of whack of money as well. But I would like to sort of point to a state in time, and I wasn't too much of a movie buff beyond before the 1970s. There wasn't much in the 1970s that I really, really loved. But sort of the late 70s is where it starts to really do it for me, especially in terms of music as well as like from the late 70s onwards. For music and for movies seemed to be a amazing explosion in creative ideas. I don't know what's happened there, but it just seemed to really ring for me. Now, this is a matter of opinion. Maybe there was some fantastic music in the 70s, but I guess Hotel California and all those songs in the 70s prior to that, and the Beatles before that, were pretty cool, but I thought the real creative explosion happened in the 1980s and mainly in the start of that, from that point onwards. Now, this is where we had like the start of these immense, amazing creative ideas, which turned into this massive episode sessions, which went on forevermore. So this is where you get your Indiana Jones, your Aliens, you could say Ghostbusters if you want to, your Back to the Futures, all of these ideas. I know there's a lot of Spielberg in here, but there's a lot of creative ideas which are just spanning out of nowhere. Now, I would like to focus a little bit of attention. So, with regards to like a movie director like Steven Spielberg, you got to realize that he never was always in charge of this supremely humongous budget. And if you look at one of his very first movies, which I thought was brilliant, it was late. I think it was late 70s, called Duel or something. Maybe if you have to correct me. It's about basically this traveling salesman, and I think it's like this is his own paranoia and this thought of this trucker chasing him down, and it's like this big truck that comes behind him, and it's like this big thriller type movie, but it's so suspenseful all the way through. And you wouldn't have thought that, like, he wasn't. I mean, I guess he was using certain special effects. He may have was putting cameras on top of vehicles and recording in different ways, but it was a very well created movie, and it just had that attention to detail throughout the movie, which was absolutely amazing. So this is where I sort of I would say that is really important whenever a movie is created. I always find that the attention to detail and like the amount of stuff that goes into a movie is incredible. And one area of focus which I find is very good is the animation sort of movies, your Disney movies, Pixar studios. That has an incredible amount of detail. Every scene has got like a little thought behind it, and a little if you look at the colourful patterns in the background, you can see that there's like a vast amount of quality and high detail which has come into each and every scene. Now, with going back to these like late 70s movies, there's definitely, obviously he doesn't have the ability to have this incredible amount of detail, but there's definitely a focus on scenes and how they look and the lighting, and there's just a number of all these different factors which are going into each scene that is being created, and just the angles of the camera. You remember that Spielberg's very famous for that Jaws scene where he's on the beach and the camera is rolling, is physically moving in, but the actual zoom focus is moving outwards. So it just looks like it's really spanning out. It's a very interesting sort of camera move, but there's just like from every perspective, every camera angle, there's a thought process behind how the scene would be constructed, and you see that even from his very early works. So that's just a running scene. Now you got to think of some of these movies which do have that lasting appeal. One of the movies which I would say is incredible for that would be the Back to the Future series. Now, people might be. I'm mentioning these movies. Some people might not like them. I think these are incredibly popular movies, which have got this massive cult following, and it's there's a good reason behind that, and we have to sort of explore as to why that happens. And maybe if I could put my little 2p worth into this matter, we possibly could start producing some very good movies again. Well, not to say that there are some fantastic movies that are released, but from the actual scale which an 80s movie was created compared to what the amount of ideas that were generated in the 80s compared to what there is now, there's a little bit of a narrow channeling which is occurring. So I mean, I'll be a little bit more impartial here now. Obviously, when you get an old man, I'm in my early 30s now. They do like to go back and look at a time which was good to them and state that their time was better than all the other times. So I could just be talking out of my arse saying that all the movies in my day and age was fantastic and the movies now are crap. I've got this little thing about computer games as well, which we can cover it into some certain degree. Well, I tend to think that computer games, especially in the 80s, early 90s, were incredible just because that it wasn't this humongous. So, and this covers a lot in movies as well. When you create a movie, there's a massive budget. There's possibly a good theme behind it. So there's a series of other movies. So everyone knows how the technical works, how everything is planned. And you've got to do the fight between good and evil. Simple, like, plot things, make a little bit of dough. The budget's going to cost a certain amount of millions, but hopefully that a certain amount of bums on seat are going to happen anyway. So regardless if the movie is a flop, you know that you're going to pretty much break even, and if it does it any better, you're going to make an incredible amount of profit. So yeah, you do get these points. Now, the problem is that when you start to create a humongous machine of people, then you're getting an issue in terms of being very sort of you're all drilled into going into one direction, and the ideas and the people that speak up on the movie studio to say, okay, well, let's try something different. You're getting some very dominant characters there at that point, where you're going to get a producer that wants something his way. You're going to get a director doing something his way, and everything's very dominated by a humongous budget. We do not have the time to continue at this point, and because everything is pre-designed, the CGI, like there's pre-planned CGI, so we know that this scene has to have this type of thing in here. The CGI has already been planned into this as well, so that you're very much isolating yourself in terms of what you can create and what you can produce in certain scenes. Now, I'm talking about one of these big budget action films. I'm not talking about sort of a small scale film, but it's a very interesting point. Is that there's a certain balance and a certain mix of creative ideas that potentially can happen on the set that no longer can happen. Sorry for that. I was just having my coffee. And It's now shut down a little bit now because of the size of the machine. I remember Kubrick. He was a photographer before he actually even started, and he was very interested in how the light moves, how all those, like, if you get obsessed with cameras and filming, you'll see that before a scene started, Kubrick would always take a picture of like all the different scene angles and take a look at them and analyze them and edit them and whittle them down until he found the perfect scene that he could use in that movie, and then decide on having that. So there is that certain element in scene creation where a high amount of attention to detail is going to happen into the background, but it's like the last thing you're going to realize, the last thing you're going to even assume. You're always focused. You think you're always focused on the leading characters of the movie, yet it's not necessarily the leading characters that you're focused upon. It's more so the characters which are sometimes the scenes, how the light travels into a bedroom. A number of factors in that respect. So you just always keep an eye out of that focus. Now, let's go back to the point. The creative ideas lost its ideas. Now, so I'm going back to this point of this humongous Hollywood machine. This Hollywood machine, which is has focused a lot of attention. Now, I've heard some financial reports and report data that because Hollywood has channeled its resources into being this humongous machine where it makes ginormous budget movies, which wasn't really. I guess it started to happen in the 80s more so than anywhere else. I know there was some like Ben-Hur movies where there was large budgets, but the real big budget movie studio sellers just kicked in the 80s, which were sort of the point of creativity as well. But it's a bit of a shame how low budget scale movies don't really see that much of a sort of an immersion into the mainstream at all. Now, I mean, I haven't really sort of seen real grassroots movie producing too much, so I'm not the best quoter on this. I'm sure there are some amazing movie directors that are out there that are starting off their trade and probably finding it very hard to get anywhere in the business. But I must add, it has never been easier for somebody to pick up a GoPro. Got to save a little bit of money for that, but then you've got a fairly good camera, and then you are recording. And now I guess there's certain things that you can do, but the creative ideas, the creative passion, there is an immense amount that you can do still to this day without even having any kind of budget for your CGI or any effects, or even makeup effects or clothing effects or anything like that is incredible. Because, say for example, you could do a scene where you could say, right, remember the Michael Jackson Thriller scene where you're stuck in a house and the zombies are outside. You could just do a pure scene about that, and you could just use shadows and a giant dialogue and clever lighting. I know doing movies in dark is very hard, but you can create all of those aspects to a movie. And if you could do a ridiculous amount of takes to get every take perfect, you might have a fairly decent, like, 5-minute, 10-minute movie on your hands. But it's a trick of patience which has to occur there. But I definitely see in the future, especially if you do get these movie studios which take on these humongous risks of these giant movies where everyone's channeling their money into this big hole and then realise that the idea is flawed, and then I remember when I watched recently Transcendence. I remember seeing the reviews beforehand, and everyone was getting a bit annoyed with it. And I must admit, it was kind of annoying seeing that somebody had just all god power and just like was invincible, and then it just like the movie just lost all its plot. There was no dialogue, and then there was just a lot of CGI special effects and just this person walking around. It was just a bit of a nuisance movie in the end. So there are all of these theories to explore. There's a lot of got to think of what's happening in today's day and age and reapply it into a sort of a story which can be executed in our normal day-to-day lives. Now, when I talk about this sort of thing, I'm just talking about, say you could say budget surplus, and how a budget, how the machine takes over and then it gets too out of control, and then everything goes to pot. Now, you could quite easily do that on a, I don't know how much you could do the drama on this, but you could do this with like a scene where a person is gradually getting themselves into debt and finally becoming bankrupt, and then not getting themselves out of debt. This could be quite a depressing movie, but you can channel in sort of good ideas, put in different ideas from a large scale into a very minor scale, and then that could be a message that gets sent out to the world, which can improve lives. So if there's this little hidden meaning, I remember watching The Running Man recently, and there's this little, this brilliant little start where it goes where this the government is in control of the world, and it's like this government is oppressing. There was a lot more of those kind of themes where the government, like, remember another one as well, where the Running Man was a very good theme because it was mentioned in how everyone was getting distracted by media and TV shows and game shows, while they didn't quite see the carnage which was really happening in the world, where they were just like hurting and killing innocent civilians and things like that. And then, which is very true to this day. Whereas another one with Escape from New York, where the government is in control and there's freedom fighters which are trying to stop the oppression, but then everyone has been put into this police ghetto state. Some incredible scenes, and like especially very dark scenes with. I guess that you got to create the helicopters and the movies and all those kind of things, but I don't mind seeing an 80s movie, and I don't think the 80s movie would have had too much of a budget in compared to nowadays. And I don't know whether you can go down to an old war museum and use some of the equipment there or anything like that, but I kind of like natural lighting on objects, and I like natural lighting of makeup. I like makeup effects on people, and I like puppets because puppets do really seem to show the better lighting's reflection and seem more real. So when you saw like 80s horror movies, you did really see something a little bit more, I don't know, just something interesting about the puppet creations and the monster creations compared to CGI creations now. There definitely was something interesting, and I guess again we're going down the same route. Once you start creating a monster and you're putting all the effort and work into it, and you're creating the lightings and shadings, you've gone down that road already. Whereas if you're creating a puppet, you can just add a bit more Play-Doh onto the side and colour that in, and then you've got something else going on, and you can put a little bit of ooze on the side and just add it. And there's this element where you can recreate and redesign ideas on the spot. And this is where new budding ideas and movie directors can come up and blow other movies out of the water. I remember one of the best examples. I don't think it was a good movie, but It shows that with low budgets, you can turn over a humongous profit, which would be like Blair Witch Project, which again is like a horror movie. Horror movies seem to be able to pull off low budgets and still be smash hits. I mean, there's always been a history of that with B movies throughout time. A lot of the B movies have been more so inclined to horror movies rather than maybe spaghetti westerns and stuff, but there is a lot of truths. If you think of westerns, think about westerns in terms of gang culture. You could create a gang culture western type movie. You think of, I think it's maybe Seventh Samurai, which was a recreated movie, maybe The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and then you could do that sort of western style in a gang culture type theme. And look, you've got the decrepit housing estates and areas. Just got to be a little bit safe around recording those areas, and you've got plenty of people that wouldn't mind participating in those type of movies, acting real and giving you a lot of street slang. There's ridiculous amounts of truth and real life that you could pour into some kind of ganglangs western style movie. Like when I say like a western, like a shootout, people are outsiders, somebody comes in. This could be obviously to do with a drug theme. You've got police enforcers. You might need to get a police costume at some point. That might be a bit tricky. Playing a certain theme, they seem to be a little bit more of a repressive thing. You could see that certain drug dealers are a little bit more moral than other drug dealers, and then you can definitely show that sort of dynamic. There's always that interesting element in life, which I think Quentin Tarantino is very good at highlighting. That the areas which may seem like the evilest areas, like the drug dealer, can seem like a fairly alright, decent, like nice guy, but maybe obviously a little bit jaded in his own instant gratification, but can seem pretty easygoing. Doesn't want to harm people. You can see those kind of people that exist, and obviously you can see that with the drugs trade, you can see the very evil people that want to oppress, and they're the starts of their own little gangs and cults and all those kind of things. So, just showing a number of dynamics on characters, and without showing like without the main theme of just like the normal hero, the young kid that was raised good but put in a bad environment but come out good, is not really like the theme that is always the case. Maybe it's going to have to be an outsider that comes in and solves an issue. Who knows? The police officer is always portrayed as good. Maybe the police officer can be portrayed as bad. Maybe they could be good and bads. It's never. There's always multiple dynamics which are occurring in life and society, and when those are explored, it's more interesting. I always remember seeing the buddy cop sort of their comedy action sort of movies. Eddie Murphy, I think it's like 48 Hours, which is a very good movie. I recommend watching it. It's like one of those very first ones, and again, there's this element of just realism. There's different dynamics of this bad person being actually good, backing up his mate, and then also like this mutual hatred between each other. It's interesting dynamics which are occurring on fairly low budgets, and yeah, that doesn't really happen as much as often. Now, one thing's for sure, there's definitely not a lack of supply of actors out there. Maybe good actors we're probably short of, but actors, there are going to be plenty of actors out there. So that is not one of the major concerns when it comes to creating a movie. Another thing with creating a movie is that there's not really much. You don't really need to have a big movie studio to release it. You got to think in terms that if you're starting to create content and good movies, you can distribute them on YouTube for free. I know it seems like, let's get the money now. I need to retool and get better. I need to get myself better equipment and all those things. But you release movies for free, somebody's gonna, if it gets reviewed well, or you get some certain lessons back from releasing that movie, then you can start again and then try and fix the problems that you did in the past. The earlier you start at this, the better it's going to be in the future. Sometimes some movie producers, they can just like crack it on the first go, which is an incredible feat and a massive attention to detail at every single length, which they probably was preparing all their lives to create this first movie. And then there's some other movie directors, which I'd probably recommend is the easier approach, is to just fail. Just keep on trying and failing and see, and obviously learn from the experience of the failure and trying it again from a different angle. And trying these different dynamics, getting a response and seeing how the response goes. Then who knows? You may have that movie studio going, whoa, this is getting fairly popular, and we just polish up a few things, put a few more good people behind this. We're not even looking at increasing the budget by any more than like doubling it, and we're still pretty much going all right with a certain amount of distribution to cinemas and putting our big name behind it. This can be a humongous profit runner. So yeah, there you go. And I guess I've turned this Hollywood's running out of ideas, and I'm basically just now talking to young budding movie creators. But yeah, there is definitely just that there is a market out there, and I think it's going to happen. It's going to come into fruition very soon. If you think of again Quentin Tarantino, very interesting movie buff. He was always obsessed with the more lower grade movies, but he seems to, and this is one of a good little keys to being good in markets in general. He seems to spot the undervalued movies, because he used to work in I think a video shop, like a VHS video like shop, not maybe a Blockbuster, but more of a smaller independent store. Who knows? But he seems to have noted performers of like more so B movies, and he seems to have noted like the actors from B movies that seem to stand out and have this very good screen presence, and seems to have that like you have this fondness. You can get this connection from that person. Maybe that person's quite animated, but even so, it's still fairly it's very interesting element to add to movies, and he's the master at doing that kind of stuff. He's the master on a lot of levels as well. It's you look at the Pulp Fiction, look at Reservoir Dogs. The budget that you needed to make that movie was ridiculous. You just need to get an old warehouse, a few guns, like a couple of blood poppers to go over a white shirt, fairly good lighting and camera equipment, and you're away pretty much. And I guess like you could have like the lowest budget of all budgets, maybe a couple of grand, and you could pretty much do all of the elements that have been done in that movie as well. Maybe you might see a little bit of tackiness in there, but there's an immense amount of creation that could happen in that space of time. Now, to get I guess the quality of the actors, which is is the main driver behind that movie, the Reservoir Dogs, is going to be pretty much impossible to find when you're just looking at very new budding actors, which are all in their teenage years. You're not going to get that sort of pure characterness coming out in the characterness. I'm not sure if that's a word. You're not going to get that pure sort of I don't know how you describe it, but just that sort of like that manly, rugged sort of feel with those. It's a very good comedy sort of quick-wittedness. Like these guys, they're in their like 30s and 40s, and they're very sort of sharp, very gangstery. It's very, very quick, and I don't think you're going to find those kind of actors very, very quickly. But I think that was the major driver behind that. However, if you can remember, people are all actors in themselves. People act differently to different people throughout their lives. Nobody's ever the same. Well, you may have some people that are fairly the same to everyone, but I don't think the way that I podcast and my podcast voice is pretty much the same the way that I speak to my friends. There's all a little different element of the way that we approach things. So we are conscious and we always act in certain manners and ways in certain types of situations. Now, if you can find those type of characters, persuade them to come down and be fairly good in the way that they bring out the movie, and hopefully those older guys have that kind of character to drive things, then you might have something interesting going on there. There's I think there's one thing that's always a little bit overlooked, is that true depth of character, and people that do have that sort of drive are sort of a little bit underrated. You seem to get a lot of actors which are not immensely, like, not the super like model attractiveness, but you get them in the definitely the higher brackets of attractiveness. But they can be like their characters a little bit sort of quiet and mute, and you don't see that. Sometimes it comes out in the movies sometimes, but this is where Hollywood always likes to pick up some comedians, because comedians do seem to have a lot more of a rounded personality. They have definitely usually lived a life where they continuously analyze and throw out things. So yeah, look at your comedians. Comedians are very interesting people in themselves, and they do have the fully rounded personality. And I'm pretty much guaranteed that all comedians definitely have that dark side element to them, because I don't think they would be able to understand and criticize and look at themselves all the time. That they would never, they wouldn't have that dark perspective. So it's very interesting. Maybe if you can find some comedians, they might be the way to go forward, because considering the amount of actors that go forward for positions, and then the amount of comedians that, like, you don't really get that many comedians going into the movie trade. They usually get picked and then come into it. Some of the comedians don't really hit it off, but a lot of them do, and it's surprising how they're not hunted enough. And you when you see a comedian be successful, they can be far more successful than just your average movie star. And the comedian seems to revel in they're low budget as well, because they're all just about the creative talent of the way that they drive their character, how they perform. They are stand-up performance artists, and there's a lot to be said about their timings, and a lot to be said about their own thought patterns, how they can be very good. And it's interesting how they're comedians are going to be very real people. They don't need a comedian doesn't need to be this Adonis, which is impeccable and is completely flawless. I don't personally want to see flawless people on the TV all the time, because I just think, well, are we watching something real here, or is this just this big mashup of people that are just not really suited to this position? I would like to just point out another little thing about casting as well. Interesting characters are very important. I think one of one of the movies I would say was a good driver of this is the Back to the Future series. Every single character in that movie, even though they're quite animated and they're quite overly spoken and they're always going over certain points, each one of them are big characters in their own rights, and obviously some of them are playing multiple characters of different generations and things like that. And even though the acting can seem a little bit non-realistic, a little bit over the top, there's definitely something very enticing about that acting which is occurring there. And I think it's just purely down to the character of how they're playing it, how they're playing it with confidence, how they're playing it with a lot more emotion. But it's working in a very good dynamic, and they all seem to be working in a. You can see that they're all interacting in a real world, and you don't sort of necessarily notice that they are overacting in general. I don't think you find people really acting like that in a normal while. You don't get people going, "Great Scott," unless they are being a little bit of a comedian themselves. But it's amazing how that dynamic works, and it's not really quite well noticed. So yeah, go down to your local comedian hall and start picking up your actors. I don't think that there's a lot of comedians out there that are making no money at all. So they're cheap. They've got plenty of character, and they have got impeccable comedy timing, and they can crack a joke, and that is high value content when you can throw that into a movie. And because they've got that idea, that mind which is constantly clicking over a joke line and a punchline, they're going to have creative ideas to add into the throw as well. So pick up your comedians, go down there, start to create this ganglang movie, and then you've smashed it. No, there's a lot more harder things to that, but yeah, just think about those interesting dynamics. So yeah, another area which is very, very important. I don't know how you can do this on a low budget, but there is fantastic music out there now. John Carpenter, he's he's amazing in his own right. So he's if you've never seen any of his movies, you've got to just sit down and watch all of his movies back to back, because they are absolutely immense. How he's done everything. He directs the movie, he comes up with the ideas, and he does the tunes as well, which is amazing. He's got like this little synthesizer, and he puts through all the music in that sense as well. And so he's got basically complete creative control on how the movie is produced. And boy, does he produce some bloody good movies at the same time. The lighting effects, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's dealing in darkness all the time, he's immensely creative with the vivid lighting that is always created throughout all of his movies, and I guess he has to be when he's always directing in darkness. He's a horror movie director. The Thing is probably one of his most famous creations, which he does actually create a number of monsters which are non-CGI'd. It's absolutely fantastic. So throughout these movies, he plays the synthesizing keyboard, and I tell you what, we need to have more of this synthesizing keyboard in the movies, because I think that it just really pounds in an incredible amount of passion and power into the movie. And you're not necessarily, you're just playing a key in the movie and things like that. You think of, and now I know we're going down the route of a bit of a horror movie when you're playing this hard synth on a keyboard, and like there's the Freddy Kruegers and those kind of things, but there's definitely interesting dynamic with that, and I love the synthesizing thing. We seem to be a little bit stuck on just other music, commercial music, and there's definitely a missing element where music is created for atmosphere. And there's no harm, especially for a budding director, just to get that little synthesizer out and just working with it, just to think how he can just add the tone of the scene. Now, this is highly time-consuming in that respect, but there is something to be said. I guess it's a little bit trickier when you're creating a comedy in while you're playing this hardline synthesizer note, but there's some beautiful synthesizing notes all throughout your movie. So you throughout your keyboard, so you can change it around. There are certain little parts, and if a director can show, a director I think should be able to. I know everything has to have a little bit of a discipline behind it, and you need to practice on things. But I think a director should be able to show creativity in every sensory element, rather than just being focused on one sole thing. I think that keeps the ideas alive and doesn't. So I just need to get my map running. One sec. Sorry about that, folks. So if they're looking at all the senses all the time and seeing how they can continuously enhance scenes, then you're definitely pushing yourself in that respect. And yeah, music's important. I think some of the most amazing classical music I think is coming out in movies now. Thomas Newman is one of my favourite classical composers. I know no way you're going to be able to master classical music in your movies if you're a budding actor, budding director, or actor as well. I mean, even movie directors that act as well. It's a very interesting point. You know exactly how you want that character to work, so there's no harm in you acting out yourself in front of the camera. I'm sure if you haven't got the people around you at first, you're going to probably act in front of the camera and just get the scene right before you actually go out for any further. And maybe you choose and decide that you're the actual the best chosen actor. You look the part for that point, or you can pull off the greatest performance for that act. Maybe it should be your choice. And then yeah, just always break down the dynamics of what the movie should be. Everyone contemplates that a movie should be just your start, your middle, and your end. And I know people will chop around with that and do different. Like I know Quentin Tarantino just chops around with those ideas. There's certain storylines where there's a hero and there's a villain. You just switch them around. The typical hero can become the villain, and the typical villain can turn into the hero. Different things can happen, and remember that we're always part of this. It's never just this one dynamic which is occurring all the time. There is multi-layers, and the multi-layers should always be applied within the movie itself. I think like one of the ideas that I always think in my mind is that I always think of just like creating I always like the especially when I was a kid as well, but I would like it till today. I think there are kid adventure movies that are released now, but they seem to be just very like, you got kids which are like super agents for the world, and they're going to conquer the world all the time. It's a bit extreme. When you've got like movies in the past like the Goonies and what is the movie where the kids find the dead body? I can't remember. But yeah, there's some very good kid movies where that you like instantly. All of those kids have immense characters at such an early age. So yeah, definitely like those movies are missing nowadays. They don't even exist. They're like loads of grown adults used to go to those movies and enjoy them, and they were fantastic. a little bit more of a focus on around kids and their skills in acting would be amazing. And just seeing different characters bloom in front of the screen would be immense to see. So yeah, you don't get that. Yeah. So one of the points I'd like to see is I'd like to see just like kid adventure movies. They seem to have like the interesting sort of dynamic more than anywhere else. Because anything can happen. They're not used to that. They've got the ultimate fear. They've got the ultimate bravery. They've got all of the ultimate things. When you've got like this man who's like, hey, I'm going to do the job. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to save the day. It's pretty much like, well, this is what is expected. But when you've got a kid doing something which is out of their league, they're out of the power, out of the intelligence, out of those things. But when they're trying to accomplish things which even an adult would find difficult, that's a very interesting dynamic. Now, I could say dynamic forevermore. With kids are going to be obviously harder to direct than adults, so just be a little bit wary of that. I always like. I like to just with lighting. I'm like, if you think like a car just pulling up on the gravel and then skidding a little bit, and you can see just like the lights shining through the darkness a little bit, and you can see a little bit of the smoke from a little bit of the gravel that's been moved and stuff like that billowing through it. But if you could just enhance the lighting on that a little bit, I don't know how you would do that on a low budget, but just a tiny enhancements and like vividness in colours and stuff. That would be an interesting twist on movies, which you never really see that much. You do see that in Carpenter's movies, but he's actually just using natural lighting, which is immense. But if you could see an enhancement on just lighting, that would be an interesting little dynamic, which I never really see in movies. Kids playing more of a role of just like being explorers. Kids just seem to be stuck in their house playing computer games now, which I guess is true to a certain extent. But there's got to be some kind of like little pioneering light of exploration. I remember just as a kid myself, just thinking, "Oh yeah, we're a little team of the Goonies." We like, and you would speak to your own fellow kids, and then you would explore things, and you just go to these little places that you would think are a little bit more dodgier than others, and there's some inspiration there you can create for kids themselves. So that's always an interesting element. So I've just mentioned two themes here. So firstly, you can obviously inspire children, not by making them thinking that they're like these superheroes that conquer the world, but just there's things out there to explore and interesting elements that are around them, and they can put forward creative ideas, and then they can show virtues which are to even a higher standard than adults ourselves. And then, so like bravery and kindness and things like that. And then there's also, from the adult's perspective, is showing problems which are happening in a global scale, and then just drilling them down to people, and just what happens in people's day-to-day lives, and then just showing that dynamic happen, and just saying this is what can happen to you. Now, there is obviously the creative element. I didn't mention too much, but we do have things like monsters in the world, and monsters are... So John Carpenter actually mentioned this, and I thought it was a good little grenade in the mind there, which set something off for me. Monsters are our own creation, and also heroes are our own creation. Now, a hero is something that we want to be, something we aspire to be. So, if you think of like the original Superman, it's somebody that's lives a normal life and then becomes superheroed and is able to conquer all of his fears and stuff like that. So that is something that we perceive as somebody that is hasn't got bravery, but then with superpowers is totally brave and able to conquer all of his problems. There was at the same time in comic books there was another character that came out where there was a kid who was powerless and didn't have any power to conquer things, and then all of a sudden he could turn into that super character as well. I don't remember what he was called. Maybe somebody can put a little note down there for me on that one. But that character, again, is like a kid who wants to be powerful and hasn't got the power, and all of a sudden turns into another Superman character. So we're trying to aspire to a certain power that we haven't got. We're oppressed, and we want that power to have that. Now, monsters show us another thing. It does show us again, but in a different character. So whereas a hero shows us about humanity's weaknesses, you think a hero shows strength, but it's only showing us in our own reflection about our own weaknesses. A monster, on the other hand, is showing us evil attributes of our own selves. So the zombie is the easiest one to look at in the respect of a zombie wants to eat your brains. So a zombie doesn't like to be reasoned with. There is no reasoning with a zombie. A zombie is just going to walk straight forward to you, and you can just fire shots at it. And unless you can just blow off its leg, it's going to still keep on coming for you. And that zombie will not be reasoned with. You cannot speak to it. It's just hasn't got the mind power or anything like that to be reasoned with, and will just walk over and start to eat your brains. So think in that terms. They're the people that will not be spoken to, will not be reasoned with, and will shut down your brain just to get their narrative working. And they will take you over in that respect or consume you. You've got to think of that in general people, and people like that do exist. A vampire is, this is going to be one of the ones which these pickup artists are not going to like. So a vampire is somebody that would like to be invited into somebody's house. So they approach people. They are absolutely kind people at first sight, but once they're in, then they consume and suck the blood until they get everything that they want from that person, and then pick up their things the next morning and run off. They can seem very attractive, and they look at themselves in the mirror and do not see any reflection of themselves, because they do not look at themselves in a deep perspective of the way that they're acting. And yet they continue the way of leeching off of people, sucking their blood, and moving on. So there you go. You've got another little driver there. So you've got characters which character attributes which are either in people that aspire to things, or people that attributes which are negative in things, and how either heroes or monsters can be shown in that respect. We've got a blocked road. That's what's causing the traffic jam. There's a little detour sign. Brilliant. Oh no, this detour is still a detour to a big traffic jam. I'm going to get on this roundabout before he does. Right. So, yeah, this means there's going to be a little bit more of a longer podcast. We do have this fascinating little out exhaust of creative ideas. How we use it, a creative idea, and we look into people and we look at society, and then how we can put it into different things. So we can put it into something creative like a monster or a hero, or we can put it into just general sort of like our own backyard gang type or people type scenarios where there's dynamics which are occurring in the world, and putting it down to people levels. And in those, on that sort of person level, we can display people certain truths. And obviously people, the virtue thing is that virtues are just things that people like in people. So what is good for everybody else, and those attributes always shine through. If you can see that the virtue shines through in those characters, then you've got something. You've got a good message which is being thrown into this. I guess sometimes a movie doesn't necessarily have to show the virtue, but I do think there is. When I mentioned before about this good and evil sort of thing, there are certain elements, and people are. Remember, with trying to be very virtuous in your life, you're never always winning. You're in this continuous battle, trying to find the best ground to be as good as you can be, and not trying to go too far and not trying to go too little. And so it's you've always got this dynamic where everyone's trying to play. Well, not everybody is trying to be like this. Some people just choose not to apply any virtue whatsoever and try to get what they can get. But in those types of characters, there you have a monster. So just look at that. I'm sure that there's more monsters out there which we can create. It's always interesting just to look at mythical creatures of the past and what they used to do and their evil strengths and their possessions. I remember I was reading about it the other day, and there's ones which there was like this mythical creature which is this attractive woman on the bridge. Once you accepted to go across to see this attractive woman, you would never see her again. Now you can see this dynamic here with you going to trying to see your mates. You got a good friend of yours, and then she's gone off with a woman, and you've never seen her again. And that friend, because he's isolated from all of his mates, he could be with a complete crazy girl who's given him a whole world of pain, and you never see him again. So that is a monster created in the terms of what is which is happening in our own reality. So yeah, very interesting elements. There's baby snatchers. So there's a lot of mystical creatures which stole our young. And you can definitely see that in the stealing of the young is the corrupting of the youth. So if you look at life and how things corrupt people, and you can point that out and show a little dynamic in a movie in that respect, then you are shining light. So yeah, so whenever you're putting forward any kind of movie, I would say that there would have to be some kind of little plot line, but you don't necessarily have to have this one plot line that is going continuously throughout this movie. There's a number of plot lines which should go over. Now, like if you look at Back to the Future, I think there's a number of plots which are going on. Trying to get back home, trying to find your way in a world of confusion, struggling there. There's obviously the friendship between Marty McFly and Doc. There's a certain hidden truth and a plot line in terms of how life is a repetition of itself, but some things change. There's a dynamic of free will and how we can change the world that we live in. If the wrong things applies and we do not conquer our fears, then different dynamics happen. So you can see seeded in there. There's lots of messages, and there's lots of sort of hidden plot themes which are occurring, and there's some highly powered characters. When I say highly powered, there's some very good driving characters in there, which and then there's just a beautiful scenes and lighting, and I know it's all created in a movie studio, but it just all looks really good throughout the movie as well. So just think of it that in that respect. There's there could be multi layers of messages which you're trying to put through in this movie, and then there's multiple areas of the scenery that you're trying to put forward. You're trying to find these very well-lived people that have seen multiple things in their lives. They've got a dark side, they've got a funny side, they've got a happy side. They don't necessarily have to all look like beauty queens. And yeah, that usually the nice girls aren't necessarily always the most attractive. The most attractive girls usually don't seem to be all that nice, but I guess you can get some nice attractive girls as well. But there's all those multi-layer of dynamics which you can show and throw in there at all different stages throughout a movie, and it doesn't have to be so tightly themed upon one single plot of just trying to survive or just anything like that. There has to be a number of running themes and something that needs to get you engaged throughout the movie and just keeps you running. And just play on ideas, continuously play on ideas. The best ideas still haven't been created out there. I know it's still just a medium of your ears and your eyes, but there's all different things that you can push and challenge. And if you can get more information, try to study the art. I am not a movie director by any means. I'm just a happy movie watcher. I actually tend to like more dramas nowadays than your typical action movie. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Is it something to do with age, or maybe is it something to do with the fact that I like watching a little bit more something on the side of truth? But yeah, there is all the best ideas still haven't been created. The movie industry is still very young. There are so many creative ideas that can be pushed out there. And as you haven't got these massive budgets and these massive pushes to make a profit and make a buck and make it as profitable as possible, you can make an absolute flop but gain an incredible amount of ideas and take on a number of failures and a number of lessons in how you can improve life. And say even if you did fail at being a movie creator and you just decide that this isn't your thing, I would recommend trying to have a good crack at it, at least trying to produce a couple of short movies. At least it's a good life lesson, and you never know when you can reapply that in a different field. It might be advertising, sales. You never know how that could be reapplied in a different walk of your life in the future. So it is something that I've always wanted to inspire to, but it would have, I think, taken away a lot of my time from being caught up in my own hedonism of drinking and everything else. But I would definitely look into it, take time and focus. Start off with your mobile phone and then gradually move on from that point onwards. Do not go into the fallacy of thinking that expensive equipment is going to make you an instantly good director. That's not a good idea. Just think of the thoughts that I put forward. If you can think of any other great ideas to add to the mix and the thought experiment, I am always welcome. And thank you very much for your time. If you are a great big movie studio which is listening to me right now, just put me on top of the board and I will give you a few more ideas if you like, and we can work something out. This isn't going to happen. I'll stick to this, don't worry. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the show and we'll catch up soon. Thank you very much.